So we have discussed till this much in this particular recording, right? So these are what are the different long run causes of comparative development. So there are, I think there are what, 21 arrows or 22 arrows here. And we have discussed 7 of them. So I think I'll take 2 or 3 classes to complete this. Long run causes of comparative development. So why is it that few countries are more developed than the other countries, right? And this has what has been discussed in this particular topic. And they are talking about various causes. And they start with geography. That geography is going to affect economic history, definitely. So this is one of the topic which for which I'm going to take maybe 2 or 3 classes. So first of all, you have physical geography. Physical geography, right? Including climate. Including climate. That is the first, you can say, arrow here. Physical geography, including climate. So geography, including climate change and climate development, it has led to human development. It has affected human development. It has affected economic development, and they can influence the economic outcomes for sure. Physical geography can influence the economic outcomes. For example, tropical regions are there. So you have tropical regions. In tropical regions, what happens is that there is a huge prevalence of malaria. No? Right. So in these tropical regions, and even in sub-Saharan Africa, there are various kinds of public health challenges. Right? So all this, don't you think that they're going to influence economic development? Or they hinder economic development? It does. So physical geography, it will affect economic development. It is affecting health of people, and hence it is going to affect economic development. For sure. Right. There is an example of the landlocked status of the countries. And you have landlocked countries. Very few landlocked countries are developed. Very few landlocked countries are developed. For example, you have an example of Bolivia. Bolivia is a landlocked country, and it has a difficult trade pattern, right? So the trade is difficult, and it leads to slow economic growth. So physical geography is affecting economic development. It is affecting economic history. It does. It did, and it will affect economic development. One point is clear, right? Then you have this geography can actually explain type of colonial regime. So type of colonial regime. It will affect type of colonial regime, right? So there are two kinds of areas in the world. So for example, I'm a settler economy. So I'm a European economy, and I am colonizing your economy. So I am settling in your economy. So, I mean, I would want to settle in such economy where I can actually go and live long, right? Instead of settling in that economy in which I cannot easily go and live long, right? So in those areas where there is high mortality for settlers, you have a different colonial pattern. In those areas in which you have low mortality for settlers, you have a different economic development pattern and you have a different colonial pattern. You understand the point? Huh? So you have high settler mortality rates. And low settler mortality rates. High settler mortality rates and low settler mortality rates. So those areas in which you had high settler mortality, they say that you have extractive institutions which were set up. Extractive institutions were set up. In those areas in which you have low settler mortality, more inclusive institutions encouraging investment or long run investment, that is what is set up, right? So where you have high settler mortality, so when Europeans come to places like Africa, they have a high mortality rates. They had high mortality rates. So they wanted to set up institutions where they can just extract wealth quickly and go back, right? So they were mainly, although they didn't go back, but the institutions were such which were mainly concerned on extraction of wealth rather than development of these countries. While in the areas such as North America, where when these European settlers came, they had low mortality, right? They can live long here, right? So they included more inclusive institutions, which is going to help in the long run investment. You got an idea? You come to the areas where Europeans, when they came to Asia, when they came to Africa, they had high mortality rates. They were not concerned with the development. They knew that they are here only to plunge wealth and they will go back. But when they go to North America, they can stay for generations together. This is what their view was. So they set up institutions which were more focused on development instead of on the institutions which were mainly concerned with the extraction of it, right? Mainly concerned with extraction of wealth. And read arrows here. Okay. Then uh, you had this. These are going to affect the type of colonial regime. No, not type of colonial regime. This is going to affect, you can say, you know what, I want to name this one as not the type. This is also type of colonial regime. So potential, इसको ऐसे लिख सकते हो. I would want to rather change the name of this the way it is written in your book. Type of colonial regime को हम यहाँ लिखेंगे. So ऐसे लिखो यहाँ पे. It is local features affecting types of colonies established, right? And then you have a type of colonial regime. So this is related to potential settler mortality costs. This is type of colonial regime. Right? Type of colonial regime. अब यहाँ पे क्या है? In case of type of colonial regime, uh, you need to be concerned with this in this way, that the nature of and this is also related to the pre-colonial institutions, right? Pre-colonial institutions also. Type of colonial regime. So I'm just changing this to this guy. Pre-colonial institutions. So those areas, those colonies, those countries which were densely populated, right? And they had advanced pre-colonial institutions. So even before colonial rule, they have institutions. They were more extractive regimes, right? For example, pre-colonial societies like Incas in Latin America, those were the areas which were subjected to extractive colonial regime. पहले से institutions थे वहां पे, and they were mainly focused on exploiting the resources. That is the point. That is also the point. So please write this. The nature of pre-colonial societies influenced the type of colonial regime in So if you have a densely populated area, for example, Latin America, it was densely populated. It's densely populated. And these were advanced societies. Advanced pre-colonial societies. So this is going to lead to the exploitative uh, colonial institutions. They were already advanced. They were already advanced institutions there, right? So it led to extractive. It led to extractive colonial regimes. Right. And the other point is that um, you had you also had to look for, in case if you have the agricultural areas and very fertile agricultural areas, they also led to the pre-colonial institutions. So, so you had even here, so you can have an explanation here also. So fertile regions suitable for agriculture suitable for agriculture developed more complex societal structures. This is there. Society is going to be developed around rivers. Society is going to be developed around agricultural lands. It used to be developed more complex societal structures. For example, Mesopotamia had very advanced, developed pre-colonial institutions, and which later influenced the colonial strategies. So it developed advanced pre-colonial institutions, which later developed or influenced colonial strategies. Which later developed colonial strategies. Then you had this guy, which is so difficult to read some with time. This page which they have made. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4. I just can't find where 5. This is there. And pre-colonial institutions, they also established, they were pre-colonial institutions, they influenced the colonial regimes established. They were regions with the advanced social structure. They had larger populations. They were easier for colonies to exploit. That is also there. So please write plus. Pre-colonial institutions. Institutions influenced the type of colonial regime. The type of colonial regime. So, for example, in Latin America, pre-colonial institutions and social structures, they were used by Spanish colonizers to extract wealth through various kinds of systems, right? So we are not going into specific details. Pre-colonial institutions and social structures. Were used by Spanish colonizers were used by Spanish colonizers to extract wealth. To extract wealth. And this led to very extractive institutions over time. So they have given the example of encomienda, kind of one institution was there, where land grants included the claims to the indigenous labor, right? And then they said this, pre-colonial labor abundances, production structure, and potential comparative advantage also led to the types of colonies which were established, right? So please write this. Comparative advantage and labor exploitation. And labor exploitation. This also led to the types of the colonies which were established, right? So areas which were fertile, right? Areas which were suitable for the plantation agriculture, you saw there that slavery was taken up, right? So areas suitable for plantation agriculture often saw slavery and exploitation of indigenous labor. Examples could be what? Examples could be Caribbean and Brazil. That was an example. This was suitable for sugarcane plantation, and this led to slavery there. Spanish America, right? Was another example. So in these areas, there was the mineral wealth, and there's huge indigenous population, and there was also slavery there, and it led to economic and political inequality, right? And then you have that all of this had also led to the long-term impact of inequities, right? It has led to the long-term impact of inequities in a way. So I'll just summarize all this. Just wait. Long-term impact of inequities, right? So, you know what? I mean, what happened was that they were even in the early days, there were economic inequalities, there were political inequalities, and there was limited access to land, there was limited access to education, right? There was no voting rights for non-elite. So all of this led to huge inequality, huge discrimination. And that what led all of this led to what? That when the industrialization came, there was reduced opportunities for huge population. Why? Because the people, they didn't have much rights. They were not educated. They didn't have land. They didn't have political rights. So all of that had reduced opportunities. All of this had led to reduced opportunities for broad participation in commercialization and industrialization, right? So this reduced opportunities opportunities for broad participation in industrialization and commercial activities. So when they could not participate in the commercial activities, how will they get any social returns later? They didn't, right? So these were few points. I think if you read the book, these were arrow 1 to 7. So let me just summarize what we said, that physical geography, including climate change, it can influence pre-colonial, it can influence local features, affecting types of colonies. So it is that point which we discussed now, that was settler mortality wala. Right? And physical geography is including climate can influence income and human development. So this is arrow 1. This guy is arrow 2. Right. And this is going to influence the type of colonial regime. Type of colonial regime. This is arrow 3. Pre-colonial institutions, so they are going to physical geography is also going to influence pre-colonial institutions. Right. These pre-colonial institutions are going to affect the type of colonial regime, which is 5. Physical geography and climate can also influence your comparative advantage and labor exploitation. And labor exploitation. Right? This is 6, I guess. And these are also going to affect the type of the colonial regime. This is 7. Right? So we have discussed till this much in this particular recording. Right? So these are what are the different long-run causes of comparative development. So there are, I think there are 21 arrows or 22 arrows here. And we have discussed 7 of them. So I think I'll take 2 or 3 classes to complete this. Have a look at this. Okay. I hope it was useful to you. Thank you, Beta.